I went to Glasgow today to see the so-called far-right anti-immigration, anti-mass immigration, illegal immigration, or as some people described it wrongly, anti-immigrant protest. But this protest, it was a bit confusing what it was about, because it was also billed as a pro-UK protest. But whatever it was, I think a lot of people were expecting it to be a literal riot. I mean, Police Scotland certainly were. I think half of Police Scotland were in George Square in Glasgow today. So I went along to observe, and I've got some stories to tell, some quite amusing things and very interesting things. I hope some pictures and video to show you. So here we go. But this event was organised by Glasgow Cabby, Steph Shaw. Now, I've worked with Glasgow Cabby, the family party worked with Glasgow Cabby on sex education issue, freedom of speech. And so I was aware that this was coming up. I was aware of the arrangements being made for it. Now, Glasgow Cabby had got some banners on order that said things like, "Say no to racism." The idea being that you'd have these anti-racism protesters who would be screaming abuse at people, speakers who had a big banner behind them saying, "Say no to racism," which I thought was a good idea. As it happened, Glasgow Cabby was unable to come. He was out of action at the moment, unfortunately. So we didn't have those banners. But I know what Steph was aiming for was something totally different than some of the riots we saw in England. He wanted it absolutely peaceful, respectful, sensitive. Maybe it's an exaggeration to say a family event, but he was certainly aiming for a good-natured event, focusing on the specific issues of illegal and mass immigration rather than anything racist or hostile or whatever. But with this event, myself personally and the Scottish Family Party, we decided that we wouldn't take part in it in any way on the day. And the reasons are this. I mean, the Scottish Family Party has got an immigration policy. I've got a lot to say about immigration. I'm going to talk about it at great length and hopefully say some things that are interesting that you don't really hear. You just tend to hear the same things trotted out again and again and again and again in the immigration debate. But I decided not to for three reasons, really. One reason was I was slightly concerned about the other speakers might say, what other messages might be there on placards. Because this issue is such a minefield, it's so sensitive. That I was worried that if we took part, someone else might say something that was really out of order and we'd be tainted with that. Now, I've actually listened to the speeches. I couldn't hear them so much on the day, but I've listened to them since in recordings. And I couldn't quite hear everything that was said, but they basically sounded okay. I mean, a lot of things said were good. Some of the things I wouldn't agree with. But generally, it seemed more or less fine. I would say the tone and the strength of the message would be like Reform Party policy and a little bit stronger, I would say. That's where I would put it on the spectrum. Right, concern number two, I thought it's inevitable there's going to be troublemakers who turn up on both sides. I would imagine you get some people who would join in with the anti-mass and illegal immigration protest who will be out to, pick a fight or, get some trouble going. And I thought on the other side as well, it's pretty likely as well. I thought we don't want to get caught up in that. So we'll give this a miss. And the last reason I didn't want to give a speech was if you're speaking to an audience outside, it's very different than speaking indoors. Speaking outside, you've got to be a bit of a rabble-rouser. You can stir people up, get the emotions going, get people excited or angry about something. And for some issues, I'm really happy to do that. And that's what people need to be. People should be angry about some things. They should be really motivated and fired up about them. And I'm happy to do my best to fire people up with a speech and an outdoor event. But I think on this issue, I don't think this is an issue where people need firing up and making angry about it. I think it's so delicate and sensitive. I think that's not the format I would want to approach it in. So I went along as an observer and wandered around. I wandered around the counter-protest and I wandered around the protest as well and around the police. So lots of stories to tell and things to show you. But before I went in, I thought I'd just go to McDonald's, get something to eat. So I went to this screen, typed in everything I wanted, and then I went to pay. And where the pay thing should have been, there were just a bunch of wires sticking out. So if you're in Glasgow and you're going to McDonald's, just check that no one's stolen the pay point before you order. Little tip. Anyway, so a bit of lunch, so then started walking around. The protest, I've seen reports saying 350 people. I would say that's maybe about right. The counter-protest, I would guess a couple of thousand people, and it was a lot more people, which I expected, because every left-wing, hard left organisation in Scotland has encouraged people to go along. The Green Party has been saying to its members, come along, unions, I mean, you name it. Anyone and everyone has been encouraging people to come along to the counter-protest. So there were more people there by quite a margin. So the first thing I did, I went and listened to some of the speeches from the stage at the counter-protest. One of the first speakers was a Labour MSP. Now, it was very interesting. I said earlier on, sometimes I think, oh, should I take part in this event? Because there'll be banners for organisations I don't really want to be associated with. Some of the messages from other speakers might not be in sync with what we've got to say. I'd be quite concerned about that. The Labour Party are not concerned. But the Labour Party spoke. Meanwhile, in front of her, flags flying, hammer and sickle, RCP. So I went up to the people and said, what's this? What's RCP? They said, Revolutionary Communist Party. I said, oh, right, okay. I said, is a revolution coming soon? They said, we hope so. Okay, so Labour MSP, not too bothered about that. Then the later speakers, we had the Scottish Socialist Party. And they spent their time saying Labour are just as bad as the Tories. They're all the same. They're all capitalist scum. We've got to, that's not a direct quote. You've got to vote for the Scottish Socialist Party instead. So Labour are obviously not remotely concerned the way I am about who you associate with and what messages you're associating with at these sort of events. I mean, then other groups that spoke, they had like someone from Scottish CND. And this lady explained how nuclear weapons were racist. That was interesting. Now, I met people from the Scottish Socialist Party and from the Socialist Party of Scotland. I bet you didn't know there were two of those, did you? The Scottish Socialist Party split, and the group that's splintered off with the Socialist Party of Scotland, and they split over the fact that the Scottish Socialist Party didn't allow Marxists, outright Marxists, but the Socialist Party of Scotland did allow Marxists. I think I've got that right. So they were both there. They had stalls quite close to each other. Now, listening to the other speakers and their messages on stage, these are the topics that they covered. Palestine, climate, Palestine, austerity, Palestine, the rich, Palestine, racism, Palestine, LGBT, Palestine, nuclear weapons, and Palestine. Now, I used to joke about these events in George Square. I used to joke that the same people go to all these events for various left-wing causes, and I imagine by their front door they had a selection of placards. So they walk out of the house and they go, right, what is it today? Oh, it's nuclear weapons. Okay, we'll take this placard today. But it's just the same people picking up a different placard. But today, it wasn't like that at all. It was the same people just grabbed all the placards and took the whole lot of them to George Square. There was no effort whatsoever to focus on what the issue was supposed to be. The assumption was that we're all fairly far left people together, so you can bring in any of these issues you like. If a visitor came from Mars and observed the event, their first analysis of it will be there's a dispute between British people and Palestinians. And they would conclude that from the flags, because that was the preponderance of flags. Now, the messages from the stage of the counter-protest, they were pretty extreme. Not extreme as in, violent or whatever, but extreme as in totally unbalanced. They were saying, every asylum seeker is fleeing from danger. Now, they would not countenance the fact that there might just be someone who just wants to earn more money, possibly. No, they would just dismiss that completely. And their assumption was, is you're in favour of immigrants and immigration, more and more of it, the more the better, or you're a racist. That's the false dichotomy that they seem to have in their minds. Also, the assumption came through again and again and again, there's always more money. The government says they've run out of money, but that's not true. You can always tax the rich that bit more, and there's always more money to spend on whatever you want them to spend it on. And the Israel-Palestine comments, again, I mean, the only explanation for such an extreme one-sided view and hateful view, venomous view, I think is anti-Semitism. Simple as that. Now, on the other side, Glasgow Cabbies protest, I would say they kept focused on the theme much better. I would say the things that they said were more balanced. You may agree or disagree with them, but they were more balanced. They certainly weren't saying, immigrants are all bad or asylum seekers are all crooks or whatever. You know, there was the appropriate some or most, the sort of words that make things at least possible for them to be true. Whereas the other side, it was absolutely black and white. So quite a few Muslims in the counter-protest, which was really odd. They really seemed at home in the far left movement. It's the like Queers for Palestine phenomenon we've got there. I mean, really strange allies. Because when it comes to the crunch, if these Muslims express their views on LGBT issues, for example, then the people around them would turn on them in a second. But I'm not sure why, but these Muslims seem to think they'll go along with this movement for now. We would encourage Muslims to come and join us instead. Bring your core moral values to the Scottish Family Party. We would really value them. We'd encourage you to help promote them in Scotland, to make Scotland a better place for everyone. And so we would encourage Muslims, put your focus on solving issues in Scotland rather than Middle East foreign policy. And we would welcome you with open arms. We've got some Muslim members and we would welcome even more. Right, we had this gentleman. This is another issue I found in a lot of events we've been involved in, is you get people trying to bring their own totally unrelated issues into it, and I find that really frustrating. So the gentleman here thinks that COVID-19 was or is caused by chemtrails, in other words, vapor trains from airplanes, and 5G mobile phone signal. Now, I asked the man if I could take his photograph, and he declined. I shouldn't have asked. You can just take anyone's photograph. Anyway, I was too polite. But anyway, he was literally wearing a tinfoil hat, a helmet covered in tinfoil. But anyway, there he was. Now, what happened in the event is it did degenerate into a bit of a battle of PA systems. But when you've got two groups in a relatively small space, and one group is intent on destroying the event of the other, then that's going to tend to be what happened. Right, and when it came to wattage of the speakers, then the counter-protest was basically winning. They had louder equipment, so it was quite hard to hear. You needed to be pretty close in to hear what people were saying at the protest. The whole spectacle, though, of like amplified voices competing with each other, I found pretty unedifying. And later in the event as well, it ended up the police had erected two barriers, and they were lined on each side with people like gesticulating and hurling abuse at each other, which yeah, that's not something I'd want to be involved in. It just seems pretty pointless. Now, the counter-protest, I say their PA system was basically winning, so you could hear what their leaders, spokespeople, were saying. And it was really unpleasant, hate-filled, provocative, insulting things. It was, racist and fascist scum. We hate you. Really coming from, say, a very extreme position and a very provocative, venomous type of comments. I mean, some of it is just like child's playground insults. That's what it sounded like. Some of it's like, the worst of football chanting of the opposition supporters. It was pretty unpleasant and pretty pointless. But listening to that style, it's like chants as well. You just keep repeating things. You keep hammering an insult home again and again and again. Loud, 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 loud. It's like dominating the space. It's nothing to do with debate. If you went up to the person and said, oh, could we talk about this? You just know that I wouldn't be interested. They're interested in dominating that space, filling it with their view, and like marking their territory. And it was very similar to what I encountered at the SNP conference just last Sunday. We went along with our pro-life placards. As we were leaving, a pro-Palestine group came along. There weren't many of them, but they've got a powerful PA system. And again, it's just this continual, aggressive, hard chanting again and again, like thump, thump, thump. Just, yeah, dominating. I don't know, really unpleasant and aggressive. And that was the tone we had from the counter-protest today. It just reminded me of an event a few years ago. I went to, I think it was maybe Women Won't Wish or something, some sort of feminist, anti-trans ideology protest. And there was a counter-protest with that. And I was sort of at the protest. I wasn't entirely at the heart of it, just sort of at the edge of it. And the counter-protest started singing, "We Shall Not Be Moved." And then the people in the protest joined in, and they started singing, "We Shall Not Be Moved." So you ended up with everyone, protest and counter-protest, singing "We Shall Not Be Moved." And I remember standing there thinking, I'm not sure this is the most fruitful activity. I'm not sure what anyone's gaining from this. And ditto today. Right, a word about the police. When I first arrived, it looked like the police had got a ring around the protest and were really, keeping them in very tightly controlled while everyone else was walking around freely. I thought, hang on a minute, what's going on here? This doesn't look quite right. But then it actually wasn't like that. It didn't seem to be one-sided at all, that they were just keeping people apart in a sensible sort of way. And I didn't see anything that made me think, right, they're revealing a bias there. But I would reckon there must have been maybe 200 police officers there today, 15 horses, maybe 20 vehicles. I mean, the cost must have been hundreds of thousands of pounds. Astronomical fee. One of the horses, I was just walking past the line of police officers, and the horse was there, and the horses make a fair old mess in the street. Now, if you had your dog in the street and it made, if it defecated on the pavement like that, I'm sure the police would have a problem with that. So I said to one of the officers, I said, could I report an offence there? I think it's regarded as littering, with the horses doing that. And he informed me that I could take it home as fertiliser if I wanted to, in a very good-natured way. So as far as I could tell, the police were very professional. Two-tier policing, didn't see any sign of that today. Maybe if things had turned nastier, who knows? But yeah, it all seemed to say very professional and even-handed. Now, at one point, I was walking through the counter-protest area, and someone recognised me. Big fella, youngish fella, and he came up to me. I know you. You're Richard Lucas, Scottish Family Party. What are you doing walking around here? You hate everyone here. You shouldn't be walking around here. I said, no, I don't hate anyone. I'm just walking around and talking to people and taking some photographs. He said, you being here is really provocative. You're just trying to cause trouble. You're provocative. And then he started like calling people around him and say, look who's here. It's Richard Lucas. He shouldn't be here, should he? So he was wanting a mob to gather around me to do who knows what. I'm not quite sure. And the way he was like putting his face right up to me, was shouting in my ear. And then basically wanted me to punch him one. And then he'd go and complain. And that was his aim, I would say. So eventually I said to him, look, I said, do you want to sit down? I'll have a chat with you if you like. Do you want to sit down and have a talk? He said, I don't want to talk to you. I said, oh, that's great. I don't want you to talk to me either. So, right, bye-bye. But he still followed me. So eventually I said to him, look, if you don't stop, I'm going to walk over to a police officer and just say you've been a nuisance, and I'm sure they'll sort it out. So I did. Eventually I did. I walked over to the police officer, and the man was absolutely fine. I explained I wasn't with either protest. I was just looking around, chatting to people, taking photographs. And I think another officer spoke to this gentleman, and I assume they told him to cease and desist, which he did. So that was that. Now, there were some people, sort of little group of people that looked like they might have been with Antifa. Maybe they had Antifa flags. They got masks on. And I was thinking, why'd you need a mask? You assume that's, we're planning on breaking the law. We're planning on violence. We don't want to be identified. But it's interesting, with extreme left things, there are quite a few people who still wear a mask as though it's become some sort of left-wing badge that you wear as a hangover from COVID, which is very strange. But then on the other side as well, in the protest, there were some people with Union Jacks and their faces covered. But again, whenever I saw someone with a face covered, I thought, right, this is bad news. This is someone planning intent on trouble. Apparently, I've seen this on Twitter. I haven't seen it confirmed in any official media, that a group of Rangers fans, a particular known group, went and vandalised an Irish bar somewhere near to George Square. So I saw that reported on Twitter, so yeah, may or may not be true. But there was footage of it, but yeah, I haven't seen any other reports of it. But then another group arrived and gathered, who apparently were from the Green Brigade, the Celtic supporter ultras as they're known, and they were completely wearing black, and all they got hats on as well, and masks so you could only see their eyes, and they looked pretty sinister. How many of them would there be? Maybe 25? If there hadn't been a huge police presence, you'd have been quite intimidated by seeing them arriving. So they were clearly intent on trouble as well. So the police stopped them joining the counter-protest, and the police escorted them, I understand, past the protest. Now, I've read reports of this. I didn't witness this with my own eyes and ears, but I've read reports of it, that as they went past the protest, some people in the protest sang the Billy Boys song to them, which is the song that's, from the Battle of the Boyne or something, up to my knees in Fenian Catholic blood. It's a really provocative sectarian song just to try and wind them up. And I think someone threw a bottle as well from the protest. By a bottle, I mean like a plastic little Coke bottle at them. So there's a bit of a kerfuffle. Someone tried to run across and the police grabbed him and took him away. I think that was, and there were 2 arrests. That was one of them. So when I was watching that, I was thinking, well, I'm glad I'm not there. I'm glad we're not anything to do with what's going on there. But this Green Brigade bunch, the police basically said to them, you can't go and join the counter-protest while you're all masked up like that, which I think is absolutely reasonable. The people refused to remove their masks, so the police just surrounded them and kept them in one place. They formed a sort of donut around them, some police facing out, some police facing in, and they kept them there for, I don't know, guess it might have really been 2 hours, I don't know. But it's interesting, while the police were keeping them there, they became a bit of a cause célèbre for the counter-protest. It became, oh, you know, the police are detaining these people improperly. They should be free to come and join us. This is not right. What are you doing, police? Which is total nonsense. I mean, at one point, a man in protest went and played a tune on what looked like a giant pretzel as he walked around the police. Then eventually, the Green Brigade people, the police started letting them go, or they got fed up, or they needed to go to the toilet or whatever. But the police only let them go one at a time, and they would have to walk away from the protest. And a little crowd had gathered around the police's cordon around these people. And as the people left, people were applauding them and giving them a big clap. I was thinking, what? You know, what have they done deserving of applause here? So the person I was standing next to, as a middle-aged man, he was clapping them. So I thought I could say to him, why are you clapping? But I thought that might put him on the defensive. So I just said, oh, what's going on here? So he explained. He said, oh, from the Green Brigade, they're Celtic fans. He said the police said they had to take the masks on, but they stuck to their guns. They're well done them, eh? Because they're here to protest against the racists and fascists at the other end. I thought they stuck to the guns and keeping their masks off. I mean, they're obviously intent on causing, you know, some sort of disturbance, some sort of fracas, and not be identified. And you're saying, you know, well done for sticking to their guns. But obviously I thought, what have we got there again? It's like sectarianism on display. It's like these people look like they're maybe going to be a bunch of thugs and they're going to cause trouble, but they're our thugs. They're Celtic thugs. So they're on our side. So I give them a clap. Now, I think with sectarianism, obviously I worry now that some people are going to go, oh, but there's Rangers fans, but there's, I'm really not interested. I've just said I think some Rangers fans maybe went and smashed up an Irish bar somewhere, whatever. But just the whole sectarian thing, and people say it's faded. It's faded a lot and continues to fade. Well, long may it continue to do so. But there's a very interesting point to make about the sectarianism that was apparent in this event in George Square, because this was about immigration. Now, sectarianism, where does that originate from? Well, largely through immigration that happened to Scotland about 200 years ago. And they're immigrants from Ireland, some of them Protestant, some of them Catholic, and they sort of brought this tension with them. I know that's not the whole story, but that's roughly the story. And I think from that time onwards, from what I know about it, it seems like the Protestant church, Protestants in general, did give the Catholics a hard time, and the Catholics did have some genuine grievances for a long time then. But my sole point here is to show that immigration 200 years ago of a group of white British Christians, Ireland was part of Britain, Great Britain then, moving to Scotland, caused tensions that we're still living with the consequences of 200 years later. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't have come or shouldn't be allowed to come. I'm just pointing out that immigration can have very long-term consequences. Therefore, it needs to be thought about very carefully. That's all I'm saying. Now, a fascinating thing, I thought this was quite Glasgow-ish as well. You've got all this kicking off in George Square. And at one end of George Square, there's a Wetherspoons, and they've got a huge outdoor seating area. And it was chock-a-block with people having a pint and having their scampi and chips and watching what was going on. I thought it was quite amusing seeing that juxtaposition. And then at the end of the whole thing, I walked out of George Square, a couple of streets away, got to Buchanan Street. And I've had this experience before when I've been to events where you're there, it's very tense, there's protest, counter-protest, whatever, you're caught up in it. Then you go a couple of blocks away and you find all the normal people just going about their normal business. And then that's always a sobering reminder as well, that is the vast majority of people. They don't feel so strongly about these issues that they would even consider going along to such an event. So I think that's quite a salutary reality check as well. If I had given a speech, what might I have said? I might have said lots of things. These are some of the things I might have said. I might have said that immigration, sometimes people describe it as invasion. Another way of looking at it, certainly from my point of view, is it's reinforcements. And a lot of the key moral battlegrounds in our society, immigrants are reinforcements. They're people who come who agree with me. They've got my values. So I'm delighted to have these reinforcements, and I would encourage them to join in these fights in Scotland. Don't just think, don't just focus on politics back home. We need you here. We need your good values to make a difference here. Another thing I'd say is it's all very well to say we need to slash immigration, but the country can't cope with a dramatically collapsing population. So fertility rates have to increase. So if you've only got a plan for reducing immigration, then you haven't got a plan for the country going forward into the future. You've got to have another means of generating more people. I think the idea of unity with a nation is very important. Immigrants need to assimilate, get a sense of shared identity, because if that doesn't happen, if that breaks down, if a state no longer sees itself as a united unit, then the idea of a welfare state where people make sacrifices for each other, that starts to fray at the seams. And that's what we're seeing with illegal immigrants, because people are coming here illegally, then they're costing the taxpayer a lot of money to be looked after. Now, people who object to that, they're actually the friends of the welfare state and of our collective system of supporting each other. They're defending it, because if it gets abused, people will become less willing to pay in. So people who object to abuses of it are people who are actually defending the system. So that's a valuable thing to do. As some of the other speakers did, I probably would have mentioned the scale of immigration. Last year we've got records. It was over 1.2 million people came to live in the UK, compared to 670,000 births. In other words, almost twice as many people migrated to the UK to come and live than were born here. Now, they're pretty stark statistics, aren't they? So in terms of the stability and the culture and the heritage of your nation, then, well, they're pretty dramatic numbers. Let's just put it that way. Something else I might have mentioned is surveys have been done in poorer countries, like in Africa, parts of Asia as well. And they asked people, if you could, would you move to a richer country? If you could, would you move to Europe, for example, or Western Europe? And without going into details, overall, hundreds of millions of people would like to move to a richer country. And the reason they don't, well, there's two reasons. One reason could be that they can't afford it. They can't afford the transport to get there. And the other reason they might not come is they might not think they'd actually get in. They don't think their attempts would be successful. But if a wealthy country were to say, okay, everybody's welcome, then the number of people that would come would be absolutely astronomical. Astronomical. There's a case in history where nations briefly have done that, and that's what's happened. Anyway, I won't go into details. So I think the UK government does need to get a grip on immigration. Now, Reforms emerged as the anti-immigration party. The leaflet they sent through my door at the last election, that's all it said on, was about immigration. That was the whole thing. And it's a shame when you get an anti-immigration party, because that can be very divisive. We're talking about creating a united society. Having an anti-immigration party sort of is not great. You don't really want that. But the reason they exist is mainly because of the failure of the Conservative Party. What the ideal is to have a party that doesn't make immigration its raison d'etre, isn't putting it front and centre, is not making itself known as the anti-immigration party, but will still deal with the issue in a sensible and controlled way. And that's what the Family Party would do. Right, I hope my adventures in Glasgow were interesting. So thanks for watching. Do subscribe and see you next time.